Hi guys, and welcome back to Wade's Workshop. So we showed the little sneak video of the engine running, and I'm sure a lot of you enjoyed that, and we did have some really positive comments. So in this video we're going to be making the final bits and pieces and doing the little bits of fitting that enabled me to get to that point where the engine is running. As we stand at the moment, I haven't stripped it apart yet. I have made a few more things, little bits and pieces, so I'll just to keep the flavour of it going, show the engine running again, and then we'll move on and make the bits and bobs and show you some of the adjustments and final bits that I made to get to that stage. So enjoy, guys. So I didn't show it. Yeah, I got a little tiny compressor here. Let's run it on dead slow, makes a bit less noise. Yeah, a little compressor here, which is for my little airbrush, as it were, airbrush spray gun, and the engine's still running along nicely there. Well, let's give you a few close-ups, why not? But as you can see, the engine's still running nicely. Sorry about the background noise of the little compressor. And if I stop it in just the right place, probably that's not it. Okay, it does actually self-start. It should. So I need to get a measurement to see where things actually are. Okay, bear with me 2 seconds. Right, so I got a clock up in the quill. I've stoned across the top of these surfaces to remove all the machining marks and broken the edges so they're nice and smooth and flat. And the little crosshead slides beautifully on there now. Stoned the underside of that as well to get a true height, but we don't need to think about this yet. What I'm looking for, I've just mic'd up the rod here and it's 125 thou. So if I bring the clock just somewhere near central to start with, let me just bring down my head till I get the clock move. I need to find the highest point, the center of this bar, but I'm just wait. There it is, the clock's moving now. Let's just find the highest point. It's dropping off. It's back up. It's dropping off. That's the high point. Okay, so I'm going to bring the head down until my clock is on the 0. Can't quite get alignment. That's just a little bit over. Let's have another look. Okay, from the angle I'm looking at the clock, it reads 0. So on my DRO, I'm going to set 0 in imperial on my DRO in the Z axis. If I just wind across now and bring that Z axis down and get a direct measurement between the top of the shaft and the rail there. Tiny bit low. Excuse the wind, guys, the noise you can hear is my window rattling. Okay, so that's now back on the 0 there, and if I look up at my DRO, I'll bring you over. Yeah, so my DRO in the Z axis is 166 thou, all by the shouting. Okay, so that's a physical measurement from the top of the shaft to the rail. So I've taken this measurement 2 or 3 times and it's come out 166 every time. So top of the shaft to the rail, 166. The cylinder rod is 125 thou. I double checked that. So the distance from what I'm measuring to the center of that shaft, 62.5 thou. Take 62.5 thou from 166, 103.5. Now that's the actual measurement from the rail to the center of the hole. Theoretical. Okay. On the little block, the nominal 7/64 is 109.4. So somewhere in making all the parts and putting them all together, I've lost 6 thou. My rod is actually 6 thou lower than the spec. Okay. So if my actual measurement, I know from the hole on my block, I left 10 thou on it. When I drilled the hole, I had an extra 10 thou. So it's 119.4 thou actual. The figure I'm looking for is 103.5 thou. So I have got 15.9 thou. Okay, so 0.0159. So the 10th thou I left on, plus the 6th thou I lost somewhere. So as it turns out, I didn't need to leave the 10th thou on, but better safe than sorry. I'd actually lost 6th thou. So what it means is I can take a measurement of the overall of this thickness of the block, and I can take, we'll call it 16 thou off it, and that will be putting the hole in this block when it's sat on the rail dead in line theoretically with the shaft that's coming out of the piston. Okay, so 16 thou. Okay, so I'm going to take 5 thou. I've measured the thickness, and I know what the finished thickness is going to be. That's 11 thou off. I'm just hand feeding this, in fact. I don't know why I'm hand feeding it. I should be power feeding this, shouldn't I? And that's 13. That's 15. We'll take a final pass of a thou. Just slow things down a little as far as the feed's concerned. Back the other way. We'll take the last thou there. Okay, so if it all works out nicely, that should be the finished size. Okay, let's just take that cutter off, come back out, and I'll get a mic on that and just check what it ended up at. So I'm just making the little spacers. I decided to make them out of brass instead of steel because I think they'll look nicer. So I've turned this a piece of quarter brass, I turned it to 3/16 diameter. I'm just cutting the fourth one off now. I've drilled them out 2.6, 7/8 clearance, and I found that if I face the end with a parting tool and then come back on the DRO reading of 273, leaves them just a couple of thou over length. And I can obviously take that couple of thou off by dressing them with a file or draw filing across them or what have you. And that's the last one. So yeah, let's just get underneath here somewhere. Pull them out. 1, 2. There should be 3 of them under here. I've already done one earlier. There he is. That's 3. And they've got a little pip on them from the parting tool. That's not a problem. So what I'm going to do is put a collet up, and I'm going to face those edges off just to clean up on that face, and then I'll start getting the mic and skimming them all to an equal size. So yeah, there's 3. I got the other one over on the mill at the moment where I mic'd it up. So yeah, simple little turning job. It's basically a little tiny tube. The only critical dimension really is the length, the overall length. They all need to be the same, and of course the correct length. So I've done a little sub-assembly. Put the crank in, screwed the flywheel onto it, put the crank pin in, the con rod. The block is now under the rails on the spacers. Now I spent a bit of time basically with the spacers on some wet and dry, just slipping them back and forth on some wet and dry until they all measured exactly the same length. And I'm a thou clearance on the thickness of this what they call it, block. Right, okay. So I've stoned across the base here, the slideways at the bottom, basically with a precision stone until they were dead flat and nice and smooth and shiny. And you'll probably see I've removed all the machining marks. Let me bring you around the other side. So yeah, all the machining marks have gone off these. They're stoned on the underside as well, up to a shiny finish. And I've just put a small radius on the inner edge, on the bottom inner edge, so that they don't bind out on the shoulder I've got on my block. I set the width of the rails when I clamped them down. Obviously the height was set by the height of the spacers. Again, as I said, a thou bigger, all four of them measuring exactly the same, and they're a thou bigger than the thickness of the block. And on the width, as I nipped them down, I put the block this end. I fixed one rail so that it ran in a true line, and it's parallel to this machined face, and clamped it down. And then the other rail, I set this end with a cigarette paper this end and just nipped this end, then went back to the other end here and just brought it in against that cigarette paper, same piece of paper in there along the length, nipped that one, then tightened them down so all four are tight. And a little bit of oil dripped in the top, and obviously I put a bit of oil in the spindle as well. And yeah, I mean, basically I can operate the whole system. Let me bring you back out again. So yeah, with no noises, it works straight away, so I'm really pleased with this. I've just put a temporary pin in here, the correct pin. I haven't machined it to length yet. Gives me something to hang on to. Oh, but I can, there's no noise at all. And I can actually, if I get the timing right, okay, as you can see, and that's so smooth. So that's happy days. So the next thing I thought I'd do is, now that I've got this sort of seems to be correct, is to mount the cylinder and screw the rod into here and just see if it has any effect. What I found is I screwed it, basically you can screw the rod, or I can screw the rod with my fingertips, not with the gland nut in. Let me just take that out. Okay, give me something to grab hold of. Let's just push that up the end out the way. Okay, so I can screw the rod in, as you can see. Let's just get it started. Ugh. Well, I managed it last time. I haven't got enough fingers. Okay, let's just get the end of the thread started. Yeah, there we go. So I can screw the rod in to the slider block, and it still runs, but I've got the slightest of noises, but that's more than likely air going in and out of this valve. And if I put my finger over it, I can actually feel it more resistance. Okay, but what I found is, if I screw it right in to get the stroke right, and then tighten the gland nut down into the right place, just nip the gland nut, that I'm getting binding. And the binding appears to be the block, the slider block on the base. So I'm thinking that the slider block is just maybe, okay, let me explain clearly. When I put the screws in to hold this cylinder down, if I just put them down just the lightest of nips, everything's fine. When I tightened up the 3 screws with a screwdriver underneath, that you can see I've taken it off the aluminium block. When I tightened them up, and I went one at a time, you know, just nip, nip, nip all the way around. And as I started the final tightening, I could feel binding. And I believe it's going to be this slider block is trying to be pushed down by the cylinder onto the bottom. I can, if I, you know, with nothing in there, I can move the block. You can just see the oil sort of creep when it's not. When you haven't got the cylinder in there. When the cylinder's in there and tightened down, it's hard against the bottom face, and I think that's where the extra friction's coming from. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the block out. I'm going to get a bit of wet and dry, and I'm going to lap the bottom of this block. I'll mic it up where it is now, lap the bottom of it until it's a thou smaller, and basically I'll go a thou at a time. It's going to be a bit time consuming. But a thou off the bottom of it, try it all again. I'll have to take all this apart again, put it back together. Obviously, if I take a thou off the bottom of the block, I'm going to have to reduce the height of these by a thou as well, the spacers. But, you know, hey-ho, that can be done. So, yeah, I'm basically, it's round and round in circles, but I'm going to start by taking a thou off the bottom of this and try it all again. So what I'll do is bring you back when we've got a bit of success. But as you can see, that cylinder's just loose on there. Without it bolted down, it runs very nicely. If I hold it down firm, I can feel that friction more, but obviously I'm not screwed all the way in. So yeah, that's where we're going to go. So when I started, I was at 212. 210.65, 210.75. Okay, so I tried a thou, it wasn't enough. So I got a bit of wet and dry on the milling table. I could put it on my surface plate, I suppose. And I'm looking for a figure about 210. 210.45, so a little bit more. Paper's getting a bit clogged in that area. You can see it polishes up that brass. Right, 210.15. One more go and we'll try it again. I think we should be somewhere near now. 210 thou. Let's just see how parallel we managed. Right, okay, well, I think, you know, that's okay. Right, so, back together. So, I'm just going to put... I can't get it in there now. Cigarette paper clearance down the back of there. Oh, try not to get in shot. Just squeezing the two halves together. Nip that side. That's nipped. Tighten down. Tighten down. Can't get the paper out. Yes, I can. Okay. Just going to put that pin back in just to make sure it's still all working smoothly. If I can find the hole. There we go. Bound up just a little bit. Okay, might be a bit of dust in there. Let's just see. Not as good as it was before. I'll have to investigate just to see why that's binding up a little bit more now. Okay, I think I found out what I did wrong. I put the cigarette paper in that way, which pushed the block this way just a little, and I don't think it was quite square, so I redid the tightening with the cigarette paper in the correct side, in this side, which is the side I loosened, and now it's all running hunky-dory again. Okay. Yeah, back to where we were before. So, try it again. So as you can see, I got the cylinder bolted down now, all connected up. I haven't put the locking nut in the back of here, but all connected up. So let's see how it works now. The noise is gone. I can hear air puffing in and out of the cylinder valve, the front one. And yeah, okay. I think we've got some sort of alignment. It's certainly for as far as it is now, everything's aligned and works and is sort of friction free. I put a bit of oil in the cylinder and a bit on the rod, and you know, make sure everything's lubricating while I'm doing these tests. So at this point, I think we'll put the cam on next and see how we get on with that. So I've put the eccentric strap on, as you can see, and the cam, and I've just loosened it, or loosely tightened it, just nipped it down in, you know, a rough orientation. Okay, so with the cam in, the cylinder's now correct, and yeah, I mean, I can basically, by pushing the sliding block back and forth, you know, I can just put it over center that way. Okay, oop, it's all running nicely. The only rubbing or sound I can hear, obviously, hang on, let's just try putting that rod. I can hear that scratching on the casting. The only sound I can hear is air coming out of the front hole of the valve. There's no gasket in the front, there's no gland in it, and there's no rear cylinder cap. So I've left the rear cylinder cap off because I wanted to adjust the position of the sliding block here and the cylinder. So you've got to wind the cylinder in so that basically it's just below the surface here, so when I put the end cap on, you know, it's not going to foul. If it's not screwed in far enough, the cylinder will be flush, and because there's a little step, where are we? Yeah, so I just marked the cylinder there, but you can see, well, you could if I could get it there, right, it's just below surface there, so it's using all of the stroke. That cap will sit tight too, and obviously there is a gasket going under there as well. So I think the next step is going to be to fit the timing gear. Now I've pre-assembled the timing gear, as you can see here. It's all pre-assembled, and I've come across a snag with this little point. Let me bring you in a little bit more. Hang on, I'm going to move on the fly here, guys. So the little part of the casting, the little seat that it sits on here, sticks out from the rear of the cylinder, or from the cylinder block. And what I found is that if I try and bolt this on, I put the 4 studs in, it's actually fouling on that on the bottom. If I lift it up, it'll sit back, but in its natural position on the studs, it's fouling. I did screw this on there, you know, off camera, and then I found that all this bound up, because what it had done is, clamping this on, had pulled the cylinder this way, and it was stressing it all against the bolts, and it all jammed up. So I sort of went back to square one, started removing things and putting them back on again, and that's when I realised, or spotted, that little tiny lip there, and realised what the fault was. It's minute amounts, with the gasket in, you know, it's probably 1/2 mil, but with the gasket in, I didn't spot it because the top edge does sit, but I didn't spot it and pulled the cylinder over, causing everything to jam out. So 2 options: take it all apart again and remove that little lip off the casting, and another option, probably my simplest one, is to take some material off the bottom of this, maybe even just do it locally in the center here, so that it avoids that that little part. So yeah, I think probably what I'll do is machine a little step through in the center of there, just, you know, by at least that thickness. I'll measure what that step is, and I'll put that size step through the middle of here. I've just realised that I haven't lapped the bottom of this, so just on a piece of wet and dry, nice and worn out bit, I'm just going to lap that. Oh, I'm not in shot there. That looks flat now. Let's just rub it on the back of the sheet on some paper. Oh, that's shining up. Perhaps a little bit of, what can we use? What have we got? Oh, there we are, a bit of the old T-cut. And maybe a little dab of that. Tiny little drop. That'll do. I just dripped a bit of teacup onto the card side. I'll just give it a little bit. Keep going out of shot to do this, don't I? Let's get a rag. Well, you can see it's starting to polish up a little bit longer with that, and I think we'll have a mirror finish on that brass on the underside of there. And obviously we will clean this thoroughly before we put it back in, because the teacut is a mild abrasive and we don't want any abrasives in there wearing things out. So I've just cut a little slot in the bottom, just across there, as you can see here. And we'll try it again. I got the 4 studs in there just loosely. Haven't tightened them up yet. Okay, and that now fits even without the gasket. Let me bring you around. So as you can see, without the gasket, it's tight down the bottom, up the top, and it's tight too, even without the gasket in there. So I know it's not fouling this time. So I'm going to try assembling this system again. I think before I put the valve gear on, I'm just going to fit this end cover with the gasket. There is a little cutout in the gasket which lines up with the port. So if I just put a screw in there, that's got to be in the one below the port there. Let's just get him started just to get the orientation. Tiny little screws. There. Come on. Okay, that's that started. Let's just get 2 in there and it should hold itself in position. That's the first one. Just nipped. 2. I just want to put them all in now while I got the while I'm on it. There we are. I'm not going to dog these down, I'm just going to nip them up. Oh, we got 2 to go. There's another one. Come on, there's one more in here somewhere. There it is. Obviously I have had this end cap on here before, so I know it all fits. I just want to make sure. I'm just going to finger tighten these. Okay, just want to make sure, yeah, we're good. It still goes back and forth, it's not hitting the back. And I can hear the air puffing out of the 2 valves now. Okay, so next fit the valve chest, the valve, the rod, the gland nut and the valve chest cover. So I'm just going to do a little sub-assembly here. Right, I've got the clevis fitted on the end. I did remove that little bit of extra thread. I've got the gland nut. I'll fit the rod in there. Let's just locate the little valve pusher. Well, I shall attempt to. Over the end. Come on. There it goes. And we'll screw him on. I don't know. Let's go halfway up the threads as a starting point. Right. Backside is there. So I can put the valve in from the rear. Newly polished. I'm going to put that down for a second. I'm just going to put that gasket on. Because we're very close to be able to putting a bit of air on this and setting the timing and checking everything. And then of course we've got to take it all apart again and clean it all, paint it all, put whatever finishes we're on it, polishing what we want to polish. Let me just tip the engine over, make sure that's going in. Okay, that's that in position. I suppose now we next need to set the timing or the length of the rodding. Now you can do that by rotating this shaft. Let me just put that gland nut in loosely. Make sure, yeah, it still moves. Okay, so it's the length of the shaft depends on how far it goes back and forth. Let me get that rod out of the way. How far it goes back and forth opening the valve. So we want the rod length set so that when the cam goes back and forth, you've got equal valves stuck out at either end of stroke. I mean, that's where I'm going to start with setting that. So I will bring you in a lot closer when I come to do it. So I've just brought over the little rod that's in the cam there, and I'm just going to put that pin in loose. I'm not going to tighten anything up at this stage. So what I want to do is now I'll try and bring you in this location here, and we can see what I'm doing. So this is just, I said it's somewhere in the middle. Well, I can already see that that's come way back too far off that valve, and it's actually jamming out on this end. So I need to unscrew this rod, which will move this forward. And to do that, let me just show you. I need to loosen this clevis, which I will do now. So just take out the pin, and I'm going to go, what do we reckon? Half, 1, 2, let's go 3 turns. I think that was about 3 turns. Just line these back up again. That's a bit fitty in there. I may do a little bit of doctoring with that. That's a little bit fitty. Come on. There we go. Okay. Right, let's go back to the valve chest, see how much that improved it. So, right, it's completely covering the valve on your left. Way too open. I need to unscrew it a lot more. And you could just see on this side the valves just coming into view. But that one's going way too far. We need it to be closing the one on the left when it's fully that way, which it does it. Yeah, it does. But at that point where it's at its furthest to the left, the valve, we need to have as much of this front one open. So yeah, I'm going to go a few more turns. So I'll leave you where you are. Let's try about 4 turns, shall we? I've just done 4 turns on the little clevis. You've seen me doing this. You've seen me fiddling to get it back in the hole as well. Whoop. Okay, let's try again. So where are we now? I got to go more. I've gone way beyond that valve, and you can see probably half a valve there at its most open, and that one goes way beyond open. So maybe another 3 turns. Half, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5. Let's go 3. Wonder if I'll end up going back the other way. We'll find out shortly. Ooh. Okay, let's try again. Oh, I can see a lot more of the valve on the right now. That valve on the left is nearly fully opening, but it's not fully opening. Send that forward to the other extremity. That one's not fully opening, but almost. I'd say we've got that in about the center position. So the position of the cam in relation to the stroke is not set. All I'm doing is setting the length or the position of that valve at the extremities of the cam, wherever that might be in the rotation. So, okay, I think that's that bit done. So, I've just put the gasket on, a little cover over. I just put the 2 bolts that go in the centre in position loosely. There's one, there's another one here somewhere, there it is. That's 2, and then there should be 4 nuts. One. And that's 2 of them. 2 more to go. Just tightening these with my fingers for now. Okay. So I got no packing material in here. Well, it doesn't seem to be causing any issues. If I put my finger over the exhaust, it goes stiff. That's a good sign. Okay. So, we're getting to the nitty gritty of, you know, I'm almost at the point where I think if I put air on and set the timing, it would run. Yeah, I think it would. I'll put the back end on. Oh no, I'm just going to, I haven't tightened any of these, I'm just going to nip these up. I've got no gasket on the front cover of the cylinder, no packing. Wonder how many PSI it would take to run. I don't know. I've got a little airbrush compressor. Wonder if I can rig something up. I'm going to squirt a bit of oil into that valve chest as well. Did I do that one? I'm just going to nip these as well. Oops. Not going to tighten them down, just nip them. Wonder if I can still operate by hand. I can. Oop. There. Oh, my pin rubbing. Oh, if I put my finger over the exhaust, it locks out. That's a sign of things fitting right-ish. Okay, so where am I with this? Am I going to try a bit of air? Am I going to try a bit of air on camera or off camera? You know what? Let's try it on camera, guys. I've no doubt that it isn't going to run. Because I haven't done anything other than eyeball the timing of the cam on the sprocket. So what have I got? I got my little compressor here. Right, okay. Where's the power source for that? I don't know how many PSI this puts out, but it ain't a lot. And it's certainly not a lot CFM. Okay. There's some air. I need a fitting really to go in here, don't I? Can you see this? Not really. Let's bring you in a better spot. Okay. I've got the fitting off the end of my. I can't get anything that way. but I got a piece of plastic pipe which will fit in there. I sort of hold it all. It's moving, guys. It's moving back. Okay, it had more to move back. The valve was just starting to shut again. Now think about this timing a bit. Well, that's about it for this one, guys. Next video, I think we're going to just make the final parts, oil cups, things like that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for subscribing, and we will see you all very soon. Cheers now.